Hello, welcome back to the channel. So today I kind of want to talk about some of the football narratives that I've been hearing, especially in the college football season and also in the NFL, where I think they're a little bit more misguided. Not necessarily that they're wrong. I think there's some truth to what they've been saying, but I think it's either missing some context that I want to add in this video, or I just think are blatantly wrong. So without further ado, let's go and go with number one. Starting off with number one, it's going to be the 1-7 record for the teams that had buys in the playoffs. Like I said, I understand that people are talking about, the reason why they lost was because of the buys. They didn't play for so long. And though I agree that not playing for a prolonged period definitely hurt these teams. Are we actually looking at the context of what these teams were? I think that that's being kind of lost in the shuffle of just like seeing the number. I mean, like I saw it, you saw it as well. Watching the college football games after Texas Tech lost, it was 0-5 for teams with buys. After Ohio State lost, it was 0-6 for teams with buys. And it's that kind of stuff where it's like it starts to build up a narrative. Indiana blew the brakes off Alabama, but like still it builds up a narrative like, oh, it's the buys. That's the reason why. I think you need to add more context to who these teams were. What were these 8 teams? So let's go into it. So going into 2024, Oregon. I think you could honestly say yes. That bye definitely hurt them because they were coming in kind of slow. Everything went wrong that could possibly go wrong in the very first like 10 minutes of that game, where Oregon had to try to fight their way back against a very good Ohio State team that ended up winning the national championship game, who had already beaten the brakes off of Tennessee, were already mad at the fact that they couldn't even face against Oregon in the Big Ten championship game because they lost to Michigan. So again, I think added more context, you understand, okay, yes, Oregon, I think they kind of fit in that criteria. Let's talk about some other games. Uh, Georgia, number 2. They didn't have the starter for the whole entire season. Carson Beck, he had injured himself in the SEC championship game. Gunnar Stockton was making his second like majority playing time, his first ever start. Again, your first ever start in a bowl game against Notre Dame, who also made it to the national championship game. So add more context to there. So like I'm not trying to give excuses. I'm just saying like this is not the same Georgia team that we had seen previously because like I said, it's a backup quarterback. And it's against a very good team in Notre Dame. So add more context there. You could maybe say that it's still like with them being on a bye, but I think having a backup quarterback kind of gives you a little more leniency if you like, there might be outside forces a reason why other than just the bye. But then in 3 and 4, are we not talking about the fact it was Boise State versus Arizona State? Boise State, because of how the playoffs were in 2024, Boise State versus Penn State. You all agreed that Penn State was a better team. They were like number 6 and no, and then I think Boise State was like number 11. So you agree that Penn State is the better team, and Penn State blew the brakes off of Boise State. It would have the Boise State if they just played a week earlier, would they have actually had a really good chance of beating Penn State? Probably not. Arizona State versus Texas. Texas was number 5. Arizona State was number 12. But they're number 4 because of how things were in 2024. So again, Arizona State gave Texas all they could handle. But if Arizona State had just played a little bit sooner, they would have won. No, we wouldn't have agreed with that. Now it could still be a very amazing game, just as it was right then and there in the I think it was a Peach Bowl, right? Yeah. So like I said, adding more context, you see, okay, well that kind of narrative is kind of slipping. Let's talk about 2025. Texas Tech. Yes. Was their offense abysmal? Absolutely. Part of that could be because you're going against a great defense in Oregon that you haven't really faced at all this season in the Big 12. Texas Tech defense showed up. So again, how can you have one without the other? Texas Tech defense showed up, do what we're supposed to do. That's what they've been doing the whole entire season. Texas Tech's offense, no show. So again, is it because of the bye? Is that the reason why? I don't think you can say with one or the other. You'd have to say the whole entire team. So again, I don't know if it really Texas Tech fits that role. Ohio State, you had Ryan Day be play calling for the first time in a while with a whole new set of players. Because, like I said, he didn't let Brian Hartline call plays anymore because Brian Hartline was getting ready to become the USF head coach. So you started seeing the first half where he wasn't really putting his quarterback in the best situation, not running the ball like he needed to. So huge talking point, especially at halftime. We're talking about like, why isn't he do this for Julian saying? And he did in the second half. So again, I'm not giving excuses. I'm just saying that stuff that you're able to see in the game, is that more so based upon them having the bye and not playing for so long, or is it more so based upon play calling? I think it's more so based on play calling. And then lastly, Georgia, because like I said, Indiana, they showed up and like I said, they blew the brakes off of Bama, so obviously it doesn't fit that narrative. But Georgia versus Ole Miss was a back and forth battle. That would you say, oh, well, if Georgia had just played a week earlier, they would have absolutely beat Ole Miss. You don't know that. The first time they played, again, this is a rematch. They had played earlier. It was a back and forth game then too, with different coaches, of course. But at the same exact time, they had played before. They had played back and forth. So again, in this rematch, they were playing back and forth. And it's not, oh well, Oregon, like just they weren't ready for it. No, I think Oregon was not Oregon, Georgia was ready for it. So again, I think that seeing how these teams have been, showing how some of it might be injury, some of it might be other circumstances. I think that the narrative of oh it's just because of a bye is a little bit lazy. It's understandable, but I think it's a little bit lazy. So moving on to number two. Number two is bowl season beyond saving. Now, I think it's a little bit hyperbole. I understand that this has been kind of going on for quite some time. You've had players opting out since about what 2017 was the first time. I think that was Leonard Fournette. Um, you're having teams opt out, and I understand the problem that people are having with bowl seasons. It's like, oh, well, the playoffs is not as impressive anymore, and I get it. So what you need to do is make the bowls matter again. Now, how do you do that? Well, some that can do with the college football playoff, obviously, and how it's structured, but there's also a very simple way to make it as well. Make the bowls mean something to the universities. You would want to go to a bowl. You would want to win that bowl game. So obviously, might be a little bit unpopular opinion, but my dream is that eventually college football will have a very similar kind of thing with what college basketball does, which is have a weekend where you play the other conference. You know how like ACC versus SEC, that kind of stuff. My dream is to have Big 12 versus ACC, SEC versus Big 10 on like the very first weekend, kind of like what happened this year, where you had big matchups like Ohio State, Texas, you had LSU, Clemson, you had these big matchups that were been talk of the town for the whole entire summer. What if to determine who has that home game depends on who wins a bowl game? If you win a bowl game, you automatically qualify for a home game of that first season opener, something like that. Obviously, like I said, logistics would have to go down to the commissioners. If you win a bowl game, you're automatically qualified. Doesn't mean like who you're going to be playing. That's up to the commissioners. If you lose your bowl game, you're probably not going to get a home game. So it's one of those things where it's like it makes it worth a lot of while because holy crap, millions and millions of dollars are for home games, especially for big home games. Like I can't imagine how much money Ohio State made for playing Texas. I can't imagine how much money Clemson made for playing LSU. So again, it's millions and millions of dollars of like, oh, I want to win this game. I want to be there. I want to win this game. It makes the bowl of the season matter. Now, is this kind of like a stretch? Sure. But some of the stuff that's been pushed around, like moving bowl season to the beginning of the year, it's a little bit too much, but like in this sense of like what bowl season does move to the very beginning of the year. Or some people have just said to cut bowls out entirely. I think that's wrong. Don't do that. Bowl season is also very important as well. And it's important for especially like those young players who are trying to get more practice as well. So I think that there is some tweaks you can make to bowl season to make it more valuable. This is my opinion. Now, moving on to number three. Number three is going to be why is the SEC no longer dominant? Now, obviously, the big narrative is because, oh, it's because NIL. Though I do agree that is part of the reason, it is not the whole entire reason. Are you saying that the SEC was the only team or the only teams ever that were paying players? No. Like no one would say that with the right mind because you're just saying like, "Oh, we never did that." Ohio State, you're going to say that? Ohio State 2011, you're saying that you didn't have the tattoo parlor and like get autographs, and the fact that you were also on a season ban, you're not going to try to claim that? No, okay. SMU was the only one who was playing players at Texas. Oh yeah, back in the '80s. Oh yeah, for sure, definitely wasn't Texas Tech or Houston or whatnot. So again, saying that this one person is the only one who is cheating, I think it's a little bit wrong. And I'm an Auburn fan. I know that we did this. We got a postseason ban from 1999 to 1993 to 1994 because of what Pat Dye was doing of like paying players. So again, I know we're not like, oh, we just didn't do anything at all. So like I said, it's saying that you never did any kind of cheating. I think that's a little misguided. However, I think that the NIL, and I'll talk about it more in a second, is part of the problem, but it started even before NIL became a thing, of a reason why SEC is no longer dominant. And it's because of three C's: coaching, complacency, and competition. And like I said, I'll break it down in just a second. So, coaching. Let's focus on that first. SEC got the domination, got to dominance, got to what it was for a long time because of what happened in 2006, 2012. Having that consistency of just, Florida in 2006, LSU in 2007, Florida in 2008, Bama in 2009, Auburn in 2010, and then Bama in 2011, 2012. Again, a lot of so there's some variation of who's being there. There's these great seasons, and also in 2011, look at 2011 SEC. Holy crap! I want to make a video of that at a different time. That's when we were dominant, and that's when you have the SEC, and then SEC Network comes in 2013. So again, you built up this moniker of we're the SEC. You got to come through us. We're the best. And we kind of carried on that for quite some time because of the fact of what coaching we had. I mean, let's think about this. You had Urban Meyer, obviously he left. Nick Saban is the consistency one for a long time. Even though, however you feel about Les Miles would always have LSU on the right path. From 2010 to 2012 was by far the best years of Arkansas football, headlined by Bob Petrino. But again, those were the best years for Arkansas. During this time as well, you had Mississippi State with Dan Mullen, especially that 2010, 2011, and onward, where even though they were always like seen as like kind of like smaller, then they always had great seasons too. Like you think of 2014, Ole Miss with Hugh Freeze. Obviously, something with Hugh Freeze as an Auburn fan definitely do not agree with. He also had Ole Miss performing. Auburn, every now and then we never were consistent during those times, but still, we would have amazing seasons. Like Georgia with Mark Rick, and then eventually with Kirby. Again, you're having this great coaching. So yes, do you have people playing players? Of course. But at the same time, if I'm a 5 star or 4 star and I can sit behind and develop because I know I'm going to get the best coaching possible at like Bama, because you look at the coaching tree for Nick Saban, I can sit behind and I can develop, and then I'm guaranteed to be competing for SEC championship game every single year, and more than likely make a national championship game and win it in my career at college, and almost be guaranteed to be a first round pick. Why wouldn't you want to go? So I understand, like, the paying players, sure, but the coaching is also a key aspect to it. I didn't even mention Steve Spurrier at South Carolina. So again, you're having this great coaching, and that's the reason why it's helping keep a lot of the talented players in the South in the South. Now, once Nick Saban retires, we kind of hoped that it would have been Kirby because Kirby started to be that pillar, but for a very long time, Nick Saban was that pillar because after 2012, who's the really one that's only really being consistent? It's Nick Saban in Alabama. I mean, they're for the most part outside of like what Georgia for like a couple of years before. Uh, you had the back to back years. You had LSU like had that in 2019. Besides that, the consistency was Nick Saban in Alabama, and everyone else is trying to reach him. After he retires, you don't really have that. After that, you kind of see some of the complacency. Again, everyone's trying to reach that pinnacle, trying to reach Alabama. You're getting a little complacent. In our mind, oh, we're the SEC. We could never fall off. And we have. Unfortunately, we have. The complacency has been a very, very big problem with the fact of like, oh, well, um, not sticking with coaches long enough or letting them leave or, making some very bad hires if you're Auburn. So again, This kind of stuff of complacency, this kind of stuff of like, showing our hands, showing a little bit of problems is the reason why the SEC has definitely fallen down. Then lastly is competition. Competition has gotten so big, or because of the effect of NIL for sure. And like I said, I think that's a huge thing. It's a huge, great thing to have for college sports. Obviously, it's a little bit of a mess right now. It needs to be fixed, but it's very important to show like, hey, you're spreading your wealth. People who are able to help give players a more, in the right sense, give players a better future of like, okay, not everyone's going to be able to make it to the NFL. You can be able to make money now than you were able to before. Obviously, there's problems to be fixed, but the competition's got better because you think about it. Ohio State like had their ebbs and flows, but for the most part, they have been consistent. They've been the ones consistent in the Big Ten. But now, what do you have? You had Michigan, obviously, everything that happened there. But like when they had John Harbaugh, you had now you have Indiana. Now you have other teams in the Big Ten from the Pac-12 again who can bring in more stuff for the Big Ten. For a long time for the ACC, you had Clemson. Now, what's going to happen with the ACC now? Maybe it might be Miami's turn. Who knows? Like I said, you're having more competition spread out. That's going to cause a lot more. Okay, well, it's not just the SEC, and I don't think we'll ever get back to 2006 or 2012. That's going to be a crazy run if, especially the Big Ten can maybe make that. Maybe, who knows? But again, those three things, I think, are the main reason why the SEC's dominance has been done for quite some time, but we're just now realizing it. So, I know it's a little bit harsh, but let's move on to number four. So, speaking about competition, kind of picking back off of that, number four is that the big NIL spenders are going to be dominating college football. I can see where they're coming from. Obviously, you got to spend money to make money. So if you spend money, you're hoping that your team is going to be able to build up and you're going to be able to make long playoff runs. And obviously, how people are getting paid is kind of up in the air as far as like, this is a graphic that I use is kind of showing like, well, it's technically saying that uh, it's technically saying that these are the biggest spenders. Now, is that technically true? Probably not. There's probably more people who are spending. But if we're going based upon this, there are some teams who made the playoffs. There are some teams who did not. There are some teams like Auburn who didn't even have a shot. So again, spending a lot of money doesn't mean like you're going to obviously hit. Just think about it this way. Speaking as an Auburn fan, we spend a lot of money. We spend a whole lot of money. We try to get Jackson Arnold to make him look good. Did not work out. We try to get Xavier Chaplin to make him look good as well so he could be a first round pick. That failed miserably. So again, you spending money on these big transfers, sure, it might look good right now, especially in the spring and then into the summer, but once that, season starts, can the coaching get there or was the player just falsely advertised? Again, I'm not trying to say that, oh, well, it doesn't matter who spends the most, but it does matter who you get. Let's look at Indiana. Indiana spent a lot of money for sure. Getting Pat Coogan, getting Fernando Mendoza, getting certain players, but also bringing in players from like a little bit lower levels and showing them that they were actually in their system. So again, that becomes a huge aspect too. So getting the right people is important. Coaching, I still will say, will always be the biggest thing for college sports because you can have all the talent in the world, but if you do not have the right coach, it does not matter. So again, spending does not equal success, but it can definitely help. So like that's a small whole thing. I've kind of been seeing that, and I'm like, as an Auburn fan, don't do that to yourself. Don't say, oh, if we spend a whole bunch of money, it'll work out, because unfortunately, it does not always work out. So moving on to number five. Now, going away from college, let's go into NFL. Number five is more focused on these sort of scenarios. You always hear like the what if scenarios for the NFL, or the NFL redrafts, and I always see those and I always think, I think this is a little misguided of just seeing like, oh well, this would have worked if this had happened, because it's taking away the development that happened for that player. Let's just use three examples. First up, let's talk about Patrick Mahomes to the Bears. Oh, if Mahomes just gone to the Bears, obviously before Caleb Williams kind of like, especially calm some Bears fans down. But like, oh, if Caleb was just gone to the Bears, we would have won some Super Bowls by now. Again, you are not mentioning the fact of like the kind of development that Patrick Mahomes had his rookie year because he did not really play. You not mention the fact of like the leadership that he had with Alex Smith and also with a veteran QB, with the fact of Andy Reid, and also yes, you can talk about Matt Nagy, but Matt Nagy and Airbnb being able to develop it and be able to try to coach out a lot of that problems that he had. You're not mentioning the fact of the team that Kansas City also has compared to what the Bears have. So those are huge aspects of who that player becomes. I'm not going into deep detail, but I'm just saying that if the Chiefs, if the Bears just taken Mahomes, everything would have been different. It would have been differently for sure, but it would have been just like absolutely more positive. Who can say? I think this is taking a little thing like a little bit out of context. Another one, Josh Allen to the Broncos. Oh, if Josh Allen had just gone to the Broncos, everything would have been perfect. We wouldn't have drafted Bradley Chubb. We would have been able to have like this massive, like, renaissance of great QB play before, you get in Bo Nix. And again, you're not mentioning the fact of how raw Josh Allen was, the kind of coaching that he received for the Buffalo Bills, and the fact that you also had a great defense for the Buffalo Bills, but also a patient owner, as much as you want to say to Terry Bagula, a patient owner to be able to develop him while you also had the defense to help try to carry you to the playoffs. So again, are you having that with the Denver Broncos? I don't know. I mean, like, you think about this, like Denver went through a whole lot of coaches during that time. You know, you had Vince Joseph, you had Vic Fangio, like you had that little turnover. The offensive side like also had some turnovers as well. So that's gonna kind of hamper a quarterback's development. So again, just saying that everything would have been great is taking away the development that he had under Brian Dable. So I don't love those redrafts, but on the flip side, the what if scenarios like, what if we just gotten this player? So the huge one is always Dolphins. If we had just gotten Drew Brees instead of Dante Culpepper, everything would have been fine. Nick Saban might have stayed, maybe might have stayed in Miami. Da, 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 da. Again, you're missing the fact of Drew Brees going to New Orleans and New Orleans coming around him because of what happened with Hurricane Katrina, the team that was already there, Sean Payton being there as well, helping develop Drew Brees. Because Drew Brees at the Chargers is very different than what he was at the Saints. Does he get the same kind of development going to Miami? I don't think so. I mean, heck, you could talk about eventually Nick Saban leaving, but like the turnover that was already there, being in the AFC East versus the NFC South, like I said, that's huge as well. I think that you're taking away of like, okay, Saints also had two great guards, especially for most of his play. I mean, you think Jari Evans, eventually you think about Ben Grubbs. But like I said, you think about the fact that Saints also developed and made sure that Drew Brees had the weapons. Is that going to be the case with a more of a defensive minded coach with if Nick Saban had just stayed at Miami? We can't say, but also like if you kind of like look between the lines, you're like, it wouldn't have been the same. It wouldn't have been the same. So again, just assuming that if the Dolphins had done that, we would have had a Super Bowl because Drew Brees was taken to a Super Bowl. I think that's a little bit misguided as well. So again, those are the kind of things that I'm kind of seeing with the NFL that I'm like, I think we need to halt it down just a little bit. Now, moving on to the last one, number 6. Now, number 6 is a little bit nitpicky by me, but it's something I kind of noticed, and I'm also part of the problem because I will look at these all the time too. But the constant mock drafts that be posted, like by CBS, by NFL Network, or like NFL.com, like all this kind of stuff, ESPN, you do realize that you don't even know a lot of times who's going to be the coaching, like who's going to be the coaches, like even after the season ends. So like all those mock drafts during the season, you don't know what your position you're going to be because you don't know if you're going to be successful or not during the season. You don't know who's going to be coaching. You don't know who's going to be like, by the end of the season, be like, I want to be gone. I mean, like for the 49ers and all the stuff that's going on with Brandon Ayuk, you were hopeful at the very beginning of the season, well, maybe he might be still on the team. And then now you're like, okay, no, he's not going to be. So again, things change with players as well. Or even think about the fact that, like, who's being hired. So even if it's just like thinking about like, oh, the head coach is staying. What if the offensive coordinator leaves? What if they bring in a new system? What if, like, they bring in a new defensive, like, what does he focus on? So again, you don't know these things until basically up until the Super Bowl, and even sometimes after that. So I think the constant mock drafts are a little, not really misguided, but they're not really that important because you don't really know what's going to happen. You can have these theories, but is it really going to make a difference? No. So what I'm going to be doing, and this is also a little sell pitch for what I'm going to be doing, is I'm going to be doing 3 mock drafts. I'll be doing one about a week or so after the Super Bowl, once a lot of the positions are filled, like as far as like who's OC, who's DC, who's head coach, that kind of stuff. And then I'm also going to do one like about a week or so after the free agency, because that changes up a whole lot of like, okay, well, whatever the rest of our needs. And then I'm going to do one right before, about like a week or so before the draft, because by that time we get a lot more information about like what teams kind of like, and get a better understanding of like who might go where. So I'm just going to do it 3 times. Doing 100 mock drafts makes no sense to me. So again, it's not really more misguided. It's more so kind of dumb. So thank you so much for watching this video. Like I said, I know it's more so just me ranting and showing showing what I think is the right thing that should be done. Obviously, I would love to hear what you have in the comments below. Um, Always love to hear conversations of like, well, I agree with this or I don't agree with this, or maybe if you have like another football narrative that I didn't even think about, I would love to hear what you have to say. So again, thank you so much for watching this video. I always enjoy making these videos. It's been a while since I made some. Try to do some more, especially in the off season. But I'll see you on the next one. Bye.